Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about What If Season 3, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Another fun episode, another fun pairing. Whereas last episode was an interesting pairing I never thought about, Agatha and Kingo. Red Guardian and Winter Soldier is really interesting, especially considering this is in the 90s. But it's also interesting too, considering a couple months from now we get Thunderbolts, where they're going to be all on opposite sides and potentially eventually the same side, depending on how the movie plays out. We don't fully know what the story ends up being for that, but yeah, that's so fascinating, especially later on too. Maybe I'm reading too much into it because he's picking the most American name possible. The fact is Red Guardian picks the name Bob. That's potentially who Lewis Pullman is playing in Thunderbolts. He's playing Bob, aka the Century. So I'm probably reading way too much into that. Once again, he probably tries to pick the most American name you can. But either way, breaking down the episode, this is the same year that the Winter Soldier is sent to kill Tony's parents. I mean, he was supposed to get the serum, but also he was supposed to not leave any witnesses. I remembered that obviously Bucky was responsible for the deaths, but I did not remember the reasonings for it. It's been a while since I rewatched Civil War, and it's been even longer since I rewatched Iron Man, because certain things came up this episode. I was like, wait, what? You were connected to that? But we'll get to that when we get to it. But Alexei, Red Guardian, wants to prove himself because he's initially being sent to Ohio. So if I'm not mistaken, this is the mission that he's getting sent to Ohio for, to be with his family and everything. Yelena, Natasha, and I always forget Rachel Weisz's character's name, but they're essentially their mom. So if I remember, I've only seen Black Widow the one time, and that was over 4 years ago, so do forgive me, but I think that's where they were stationed at, in America, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, when it's all said and done, he wants to try and prove himself. It's right, there's this cool, amazing asset, the Rook, who's going to be the one that ends up changing everything in our favor, and Mother Russia, the revolution, yada, 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 so on and so forth. I do love the cut side by side of, hey, here's Bucky's experience of getting into America, and here's Alexei's attempts at getting into America. And I just love him putting on, even though he's putting on that American accent, and you can hear him there's a double layer to that, where you have David Harbour doing a Russian accent, but then also doing an American accent, but doing a Russian, doing an American accent, keeping a little bit. It's that's such an interesting thing to think about. It's it's kind of scratches your brain in a weird way when you think about it too much. But yeah. So Alexei ends up saving, the Starks. Obviously, just for him, it's whoa, we could just steal this. We don't have to kill anyone. Because he's also trying to say, right, we leave Stark to live. And the fact is that you'll kind of strike more fear that way. But before they could finish the job, police show up. I'm surprised. I guess they didn't know that Alexei was there at the time, because Bucky didn't say anything, but I'm surprised they didn't immediately kill Red Guardian. He busted up the function, but it's well, you did the job. Well, you did half the job, because it's kind of a mission failure, which even Bucky's I've never failed a mission before. So we also have Ben, I was about to call him Ben Foster. Ben Foster's the actor. Bill Foster shows up representing S.H.I.E.L.D., and he talks to a Ranger Morales, and I was at first I was is she someone supposed to know? I had looked at, because I was listening to her voice. It didn't necessarily sound familiar. Looked it up, saw it at the end of the episode. It's America Ferrera. I was oh, that's fucking sick. And I was that's dope. But I was are we supposed to know Ranger Morales? I was I don't think she's supposed. The way they focus on her when she first showed up, I was she seemed like we're supposed to be someone we know, but it might just be nah, this is just a character for this. Maybe she has some significance that I'm just not remembering. Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it in the movies, but it could also just be no, she's just a important character just for the sake of this story. She's one of our main characters. But I love the partnerships all around, Alexei and Bucky, and also love Bill and Ranger Morales is back and forth. She had made that point later on in the episode I love so much, where she was oh yeah, I've what'd she say, I wrestled or headlocked. She did something to Bigfoot. She was so these Russians don't scare me. And Ben, I keep calling him Ben. Bill was like, wait, what? She's like, it ended up being a mountain lion. I'm like, what are you talking about? But obviously they're trying to keep a low profile till they can like figure this situation out. And I love that they're at Burger Place, and then Alexi's going on and on and on about like, oh, like the corrupt capitalism and stuff like that. The lady's like, I just asked if you want some extra fries, and then Bucky like puts on the charm and stuff like that, and she kind of gets swooned, and it's like, oh, I'll throw in some extra fries for you. And Alexi's like, dude, I had her, like I was like you know, weakening her brain a little bit, and then you had to step in, but regardless. They end up jacking a ride. What was it? Too Fast for You is on the license plate, and eventually get caught up with by. Well, no, they end up at a roadblock, and then here's Alexi putting on his American accent, like, "Yeah, we're going to see our sisters." Like, "Oh, you guys are brothers, right?" It's like, "Yeah, where are you getting your sister? A sweater, TV." Getting her a sweater and a TV because he's like, yeah, I love your advice because I'm trying to get, you know, pick a gift for my wife's birthday or something like that, and notice the shield in the back, and just every chance he gets, Bucky's trying to murder somebody. That's also the thing too that people talk about, like when you think about Civil War, when Bucky was fighting everybody, he was going for the kill, because it's like the thing I always think about. I think the scene's in the trailer too, when Bucky points a gun at Tony, and Tony puts like the nanotech glove on. It's like, yo, if I hadn't done that, he would have blown my freaking head off. But yeah, it's just so quick to violence. I mean, it makes sense. You're a trained assassin. Even though he's not fully Winter Soldier mode right now, he's definitely not Bucky right now. This is him when he still doesn't have his memories. He's just a killing machine following his orders. He's also can be like activated, but for the most part, he just does what he needs to do without being fully activated. So. But Alexi's like, yo, we don't have to drop bodies. Because there's an interesting thing. Like, yes, he's all about Mother Russia, but he's also about handling things the right way. You know, like the pigs that is the capitalism of, you know, America and stuff like that. You know, I think for him, it's like, we don't have to stain ourselves. We don't have to drop down to their level to do this. So I think that's why he's so against murder. And so every chance he's getting, he's stopping Bucky from killing somebody. Bill ends up going all Goliath. But I love Alexi just like shooting him in the face, jumping with that shield, and then like knocking him back. It's just like, and then like flipping back into the car. It's like, that was a pretty smooth operation all around. Um, in fact, Alexi ends up helping Bucky later on learn a little bit about himself, because Bucky's like, I don't remember much of who I was, because they both are in a situation where Alexi talks about like, right, I was a kind of a nobody, and being a soldier, becoming the Red Guardian allowed him to be somebody, which Bucky's like, I don't even know my name, I don't know who I am or where I'm from. But then, like, he remembers Coney Island. It's like, hey, see, you're a Coney Island hero. It's all going to be okay. And it's, like, interesting. Whereas, like, it took Steve helping Bucky remember who he is. It's like, that's going to be an interesting thing as we get to the ending of the episode about, like, where that goes. But I'll talk about that more when we start discussing the end of the episode. But there is this beautiful bond and friendship that's kind of forged here. Kind of these two, like I said, nobodies who kind of want to kind of be somebody. But yeah, Bucky gets ordered to kill Red Guardian, and they ultimately end up meeting the Rook, which ends up being Obadiah Stane. Now, this is where I was talking about, like, man, I've not seen Iron Man 1 in so long that I was like, I mean, I remember Obadiah Stane being the main antagonist at the end, but I was like, did he play a role in, like, Howard and his wife's death? Like, I didn't remember that. I mean, maybe that's probably something that came up in Iron Man 1. I mean, I know it's not until Civil War that we find out the one that actually pulled the trigger was Bucky, but I don't remember if Obadiah, like, had, like, I know he was doing some shady stuff with Stark Industries. Maybe like him selling information and trying to get the Starks killed. Maybe that's specific to this storyline. And maybe, once again, I do forgive me. I just haven't seen Iron Man 1 in so long. And maybe Civil War brought that up, but I don't ever remember Obadiah being brought up in Civil War. So I feel like that's information that, like, you correlate that and connect with the information from the first Iron Man that Obadiah had something to do with. I just don't ever remember him being brought up in Civil War. But like I said, it's been a while since I rewatched it, so I could be misremembering. But obviously, Alexi's world comes crashing down because he built this up in his head, like, right, you're this great hero. But then it's like, oh, you're a capitalist pig. He's like, wait, so I've been working for a capitalist pig. And Obadiah was about to kill them until Bucky, like, shielded him out the window. I was like, oh. But I mean, it seemed like his body landed in a fountain. I was like, well, he could be alive. But it's like, nah, that fountain's not that deep. He's definitely dead. I even love Bucky being like, oh, I kind of murdered that guy. And Lexi saying, it's fine. He wasn't that good of a guy. So wasn't too butthurt about it. But not only do they have to deal with Ranger Morales and Bill and some SHIELD people, they also have to worry about the people sent from the Red Room after them. Not widows, but just kind of like soldiers in general. Make their way out. And I love the whole like jumping out the window and just Bucky just like using his metal arm to kind of slow them down. I was like, that's pretty dope. And just like Bill and Morales chasing after him. And I love that, like, I forgot what it was that Bill had said specifically. He was like, get back up, get this person. We're not going to let even a rat go by. And you hear Agent Morales literally repeating exactly everything he said. I was like, that was so unnecessary. But yeah, Bucky and Alexi are on the run. Like, their encounter with Bill again, and deadly combination, these two, just when it's like Bill ends up, how did it go down? I think Bucky attacked his leg, punched his leg, made him drop Alexi. Alexi used his shield to jettison Bucky up, and he uppercuts him and knocks him back. Once again, working with a cap shield, not having one yourself, just makes me think about Civil War, where they were kind of bouncing that back and forth, which is also interesting too, because you kind of get a little bit more of that flair in Falcon and the Winter Soldier when Sam and Bucky are fighting John Walker for the shield. So it's just kind of, it brings all that to mind. But our duo gets cornered, and they ultimately have the guy from Russia trying to say the command to Bucky, even though Bucky's like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to end up forgetting, and they're going to try and make me kill you. But for him, it's like, for Red Guardian, it's like, no, I'm going to stick by your side throughout this, because it's like, you're a compatriot, you're a companion, like, we'll see this through to the end. But despite everything, like, his friendship actually made, and it seems like that's going to be a big theme this season, it feels like, so far, it's always been there. It's a theme of across all the seasons, but it feels like maybe the big theme this season will be friendship. Speaking, it just popped in my head. I forgot what the exact circumstance was. Oh, it was jumping that canyon, and the car ended up crashing when, like, everyone, it's like Bucky, Alexi, and then Bill and Ranger Morales, and even Uatsu, the Watcher, being like, like, being shocked. I was like, I love that. It was just like, let's get little unnecessary things. Or like, we don't need your in-universe reaction, Watcher. But I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Who watches the Watchers, right? But either way, I just remembered that just now. I don't want to talk about it, but that's why I think it's such a unique thing, that it's like, right, Bucky was kind of not completely deprogrammed, because obviously it takes a lot to deprogram him, but in that moment, he was able to kind of maintain himself because of his friendship with Alexi, and they bust out the situation, like, Foster and Ranger Morales are there, and it turns into like this whole like showdown, and when we cut away from it, Bucky's back in Russia being programmed again, so he's back to being the Winter Soldier. Had a momentary break from it, but then we find out Red Guardian survived, and he's kind of been laying low as like a gym teacher or whatever, and talk about like, oh, America's made you weak. Bill shows up offering him a job. So that's the interesting thing, because like that was all in the 90s, and it's like, well, Avengers doesn't happen until 11 years later, and we see like the entire group, and I was like, is he going to replace Cap? But it's like, no, Cap's there, and then he just like bumbles into the middle. So I was like, oh yeah, just they have two super soldiers on their side. So it makes it all in this universe of interesting. When we get to Winter Soldier, that's going to be fascinating, because you're not going to have just one person. You're going to have two people pulling for Bucky getting his memories back, And the fact is that it's Bill that brain, because I'm so curious, because that's why I was surprised, because I was almost expecting, like, why is it not Nick? But it's like around this time Nick Fury isn't Nick Fury, because this is the 90s, so this would be the Nick Fury that we saw in the Captain Marvel movie, which I've only seen Captain Marvel once, and that was in theater, so I don't even fully remember his position. He's definitely not the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. like he eventually became, but it's like he was definitely a lower ranker person, so I'm assuming Bill would have been a higher rank than him, considering he was there and not. But because if I remember correctly, isn't like Captain Marvel like the mid 90s? So who knows? Like Nick could be an even lower rank than he was in um, Captain Marvel. But like I said, it's been a minute, so I don't remember the dates off the top of my head. I just distinctly remember the 90s, but I think it was like mid 90s. I don't even think it was late 90s. I'm pretty sure it was mid 90s. But either way, my thinking is like I'm so curious to see what that means, like with Bill being the one that brought in Red Guardian, and what does that mean to hit for his relationship with Shield? It's like, well, we know that got complicated, especially because of Hank and everything too. And what's this mean for him and Ghost? Like, does he still eventually meet Ghost? And that's also interesting too, considering like, well, I didn't even think about that with this whole time. I was bringing up Thunderbolts, but it's like, well, Ghost is in Thunderbolts, so it's like, oh, just that runs even deeper. Once again, that symmetry, I don't know how much of that is on purpose. It's like, well, they already knew Thunderbolts was in the work when they were producing this, so who knows? You know, once again, it just depends on when it comes to this animated stuff, how far in advance is like the script's written versus like obviously when the animation comes out, because obviously the animation takes a long time. But I don't know. It's just interesting parallels to think about. And like I said, it's always that thing of we'll never know, but always wanting to know like the butterfly effect of like what it means to have Alexei. Like what does that do to like the whole Avengers lineup dynamic. Also, let's not forget this is also a universe where Howard and his wife are alive. So it would also change Civil War drastically, because Zemo wouldn't be able to fully pit them against each other, because Tony would be on Steve's side, because turns out, hey, you might have attempted to murder my parents, but you didn't actually do it. So it would change a lot when you really, really sit to think about it. So I don't know. I mean, regardless, just another fun episode. Just kind of a very very. I don't know why this is the first example I have. It's so I was about to say very Thelma and Louise, especially like the whole going off the cliff thing. It's so interesting because I'm pulling that as a reference, but I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen that movie all the way through. I feel like I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I know the ending of it, but I'm like, I don't. Yeah, just a fun ragtag duo situation again, you know. Also, once again, all these things I'm forgetting, because I'm like, literally last episode dealt with Howard in Hollywood. This one never had to directly deal with Howard, but it also still directly dealt with Howard. So some very, very interesting developments. I'm curious to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.